Welcome to the Metropolitan Audit Committee meeting. It is August 7th, 2025, and it is a little after 4 o'clock.
4:02.
4:02, yeah, 4:02.
Clock is wrong.
Yes, it is. So public comment, did anybody sign up for public comment period? So no, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Should be in your packet. Does anybody have any questions, amendments? Or can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? Motion passes. All right, old business, discussion on the request for an audit of the property assessor's office, assessment processes, and administrative processes. So I think at this time, I'm gonna go back to our auditor, Lauren, to just sort of recap what happened last time and get us up to speed, because I think some things have changed since before it was anonymous, but now we have someone on record and it's been made a little bit more specific what's being requested. And then I'll come back to sort of run of show.
So at the last meeting, I presented a request that we had anonymously received of the property assessor's office. There was discussion around it, but the request at that time was not very specific, and the property assessor informed us of some other audits that their office goes through and other information that may be pertinent. So the audit committee had asked for us to go out and talk to get more information about the other work that's done, because we don't want to do a redundant audit, and see if we could get more information about the request itself. And so with that, we did get a specific request from Councilmember Benedict with more details on what that request entails, as well as we met with the state, which we have Ryan Duggan here from the state property assessors division or something like that, and met with him to kind of go through what their work that they do. And so what they're doing is it's self-reported information throughout the appraisal cycle that they are monitoring and looking at sample selections related to that, looking at underlying details and information and verifying that information. There's a packet, or there's the instructions on what they follow, which are in your packet as well.
Can I ask a question just for some clarity? So the information that they audit comes from the different assessors' offices throughout the county. They are self-reporting, hey, this is what we've done in specific properties or whatever, and from that, they take samples of those self-reported parcels?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's other different pieces that they look at, exemptions and other information. We also reached out to the external auditors, Crossland, to see what they do in the ACFR audit. They do a sample selection of properties where they do a sample selection of exempt properties and verify their exemption, as well as they do a sample selection of properties and map them, make sure that they're properly classified, look at the details, look at the appraisal values of those, and make sure that all information is correct as well. They also do process walkthroughs every year for the ACFR audit to make sure that the process stays the same.
Okay. So, I think we have to vote on how the meeting's gonna be run, is that correct? Okay, so what I think, this is not typically how this goes, and so I think that's why we're being very deliberate on how we're gonna be communicating how the meeting's gonna go. So what I think the best way to move forward is to have Councilmember Benedict speak. I'm gonna give 5 minutes to speak on, whatever she wants to say. Well, her reasonings for wanting the audit, yada yada. And then I will go to Assessor Wilhort, give her the same amount of time to respond, and then that will end public discussion about anything, and then the committee will discuss. I do think it's important that if you have a question of
Ryan Duggan.
Ryan at the state's office, because that's sort of a new element. If you want to ask him questions, I think that's fair, and then we will vote on the motion. So is everybody okay with that 5-minute allocation per? All right, can I get a
Chair?
Yes.
May I inquire? So 5 minutes to present and speak as they see fit, but subsequent to that, as part of our discussion, may we direct questions to them, or we're only speaking amongst ourselves? I think
we're only speaking amongst ourselves. If you want to ask a question of the state office.
Oh, okay. All right.
If we
Right.
discover in the course of our discussion that we really wish we could ask questions, can we
Sure.
discuss
Yeah.
changing our rules? Okay,
Yeah.
let's begin with that.
All right, perfect. So can I get a motion on that rules of the order of procedure?
5 minutes, 5 minutes. I move that we have 5 minutes, and then group discussion.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Not voting? All right, motion passes. All right. Councilmember Benedict?
Thank you, council members, chair, and thank you, members of the committee. And, thank you especially for the opportunity to speak today. So after the last meeting where concerns about the assessor's office were raised, concerns, of course, that you considered and deferred, I took the opportunity to look more closely into the matter. That inquiry was informed by feedback from constituents who are increasingly confused or frustrated by the property assessment and appeals process. As council members, we're responsible for the purse of the city. We're the officials elected to determine how our tax dollars are being spent, and we rely on you we rely on you and the work that you do to influence, of course, our budgetary decision-making. So first, and quite unfortunately, I'd like to address an accusation I heard earlier today regarding motivation for making this request. It was brought to my attention that Ms. Wilhoit believes this is politically motivated, as she believes I plan to run against her for assessor. That's unequivocally false, and frankly, it's offensive. I'm not seeking any other elected office. I think my colleagues on the body know that that is clear, that I have spoken about not seeking any other elective office. This is about transparency and trust in government. And to be clear, this is not about questioning the professionalism of any individual or individuals. My goal is to ensure that the public can have full confidence in the systems that support how we value property and how we resolve disputes. These processes affect every homeowner and business in Nashville, and they must be clear, consistent, and trusted. So I'm requesting a comprehensive audit of the assessor's office, its relationship with the Metro Board of Equalization, and a review in one small area of the work that is done between the assessor and the state. The audit would focus on 5 key areas. A full departmental audit of the assessor's office, looking at internal operations, transparency of assessments, accessibility by the public, and how funds and staffing are managed. It's my understanding, and based on your last committee meeting, it's my understanding that this hasn't been done since 2017, so nearly 8 years ago. Second, a structural audit of the MBOE, specifically to examine its independence, financial oversight, and ethical safeguards, given its critical role in the appeals process. In this area, one concern that I would additionally like addressed is pay for the board members. To the best of my knowledge, the MBOE is the only board that receives compensation. The assessor funds that pay and has recently requested a significant increase for those board members. And that seems to me to be a conflict of interest. Thirdly, a review of the board appointment and vetting process to ensure we have adequate conflict of interest protections and public trust in how board members are selected. Fourth, review of transparency and accessibility in the appeals process, so that property owners have access to the same information and due process expectations that any fair systems would require. And today I'm going to add that, and this is, so you have this in your packet, but I'm going to add that I'd like to include a review of the state's auditing process with our assessor. As we heard last month, the state has significant oversight to the reassessment process, and that's a good thing. I would like to understand, though, exactly how that relationship with the state works. One concern I have, and I believe Councilmember Johnston lifted that up a minute ago, is relative to the properties that are selected to be reviewed by the state. For instance, who creates the list that is submitted to the state for them to then randomly select a property or properties to review? Is the state provided a list, and if so, by whom? Or is the state using technology to randomly select properties for their validation of the assessor's work? So ultimately, this request is about good governance. These offices play a critical role in the fairness and integrity of our local government, and this audit would help identify any improvements needed to strengthen that trust. So that's the summary of the concerns I have. As I said, on your desk is the full letter I sent to Ms. Riley with all the details that were also emailed to you, and I really appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. All right, I got started a little bit late, but have you at 4.5 minutes, so, all right. Assessor Will Hoyt.
Thank you. Good evening, Board, and thank you so much. I want to say that I have here with my staff from the Assessor's Office, along with Randy Ward, Brad Pigg, along with Christy Scott is not here yet. She's coming. She's going to provide this response to you. But I also have invited the legal department representative, Attorney Thomas and Attorney King, who represent the Independent Metro Board of Equalization in all levels of actions of what they do. I want to first, I wasn't planning for that response, but I want to say running for office is something that Council Lady Benedict told me directly. So that is not something to be offensive about, because she shared that with me. If she's changed her mind since then, that may be okay. But she did tell that to me, and once she said it to me, I shared it with my staff. She didn't say that she was running against me. She said she wanted to run after me. So she did say she wanted to run for the office. In reference to the 5 key areas, I don't have enough time to address all of them. I would love to, but I will be providing you with a copy of this in response to everything that is in Councilmember Benedict's letter. In 2017, I do want to point out again that is an audit that I requested myself to understand what I was inheriting after I had been blessed by the voters of Nashville and Davidson County. So I wanted to see what that audit is about. I cannot go through each one of these issues, but I am going to highlight, because you'll get this in copy, but let me highlight a couple of issues, one of them in reference to what has been requested. My understanding, you want to demonstrate consistency and fairness in the property assessment by applying standardized mass appraisal techniques and well-established methodologies in compliance with the state and professional guidelines. When a mass appraisal process, comparative sales are selected based on the objective factors such as location, size, age, and condition, and they're never based on the ownership type or the status. And I go through this whole process of explaining how we select and how we do the reappraisal in a very open and fair in a fair proceeding. But I want to also go to the next point that she wanted to have responded, which I think is a very important one. There's a request for the audit for the independent oversight of the Metropolitan Board of Equalization, stating that the independent MBOE is tend to serve as an independent venue for appeals. Current structure raised serious questions about the operation and financial autonomy. I'm encouraged that the council member shares my concerns regarding the structural and operational independence of the MBOE. I have raised this issue consistently beginning in 2017 during discussions with the chair and members of the MBOE. Specifically, I question why an independent board is both physically located within the Assessor of Property's office and financially housed within my department budget. It has been placed in every Assessor of Property's budget by the city mayor prior to 1993, over past 30 years, for which 8 of those years was supported by all council members, specifically the council member that has requested the audit. Nothing has been hidden. To my knowledge, no one has asked a question other than the former assessor, other than myself, than the former assessor, Joanne North. To date, no one within Metro government has been able to provide a clear explanation for this arrangement. Former Assessor of Property Joanne North, who served from 1993 to 2016, excuse me, that's incorrect, but nonetheless to her end of her time, confirmed that she also questioned the structure during her tenure. So I'm going to go on to say that, as I have often clarified, including to the current mayor during a time on the council via social media exchange, the independent board is not my board. It is the board of the mayor. It is confirmed by the council. It is their board pursuant to Metro Code Title 5.48.020. I fully support to realign the Independence MBOE in a manner that honors its intent. That doesn't require an audit. That requires legislative action, which is why I've asked my council member to initiate that restructuring, because the former Assessor of Property and myself have often wondered, why did Metro government do this? And it has to be Metro government, the mayor, the council members that have to vote to make a change. So it appears that there is some agreement in that, from not only myself, from when I started talking about this in 2017, to now the council member after 8 years of voting for it to be in my budget, and also housing them in my office, and also my own council member who agrees that it doesn't take an audit to see that this is something that needs to be addressed. One of the other final issues I'm going to point out, and I'll sit down, or two, it was a request for the audit
You got
regarding...
5 seconds.
Well, let me just say this. The board is compensated because the board asked me to ask for an increase. In 2021, there was a big amount of appeals that was requested, and that board works from Monday through Friday around the clock. Their pay had not been changed. No council member nor the mayors have recognized this, but it's considered a volunteer position, and it's considered that they are getting rich being on the board, obviously. They're very disappointed. And so they asked me to make that request because Metro government placed them in my budget. Metro government placed them in my office, and they placed them that 30 years ago. And in regards to the formal process for looking at how there may be conflict of interest, there already exists a process for that.
So yeah, I'm
want
gonna have
2
to,
minutes.
I'm gonna stop you. We're at 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for it, and I think that you will find the information that I responded to relevant to everything that has been discussed that does not require an audit. It requires legislative process.
Councilmember, Chair,
Yeah,
may
sure.
I make one comment? I want you to know, I want the public to know, it is patently false. It is a complete lie. At no time have I ever said that I want to run for the assessor of property.
No.
I have no interest in running for political office.
No,
Time's up.
Okay, yeah, time's up. We're gonna.
and please don't call me a liar.
Okay.
You said it.
Okay.
I said it was
Nope.
a lie.
You did, no, it's not a lie.
This is irrelevant to
I will
this.
clear the room. We're not doing this. All right. Open it up for discussion questions amongst ourselves, whoever wants to go first. Go ahead.
Thank you, I'll just speak. I think this audit process is something that is routinely done to every department simply because it is good government to ensure that all departments are operating efficiently and according to best practices. And we frequently discover that they are, or that there's some things that have gotten loose and need tightening up, and those departments typically follow the recommendations and come in line. It is a great way to promote trust and transparency in our government, which I think is very important. So I think emotions aside, that it has been an interesting year. We've had several interesting years with regard to very high appraisals because Nashville is booming. That probably has nothing to do with any deficit in process. But as council members, we frequently hear from constituents who do not fully understand the complexity of the process, and there is distrust out there. I see this as an opportunity to dispel distrust, and I fully expect that it will be, as many audits are, a very objective process that may identify some deficiencies that can be corrected, and in that process will recreate trust. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I think it's appropriate that we have an audit according to just the appropriate criteria that are determined through this discussion and other things.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I guess that's where I wanted to start, because as I read through the requests, some of these items seem ripe for maybe an audit. Some of them seem more policy oriented, and I wondered if, Lauren, you all had given any thought to which of these things might be auditable.
Admittedly, I think we could find a way to audit all of these, because we would look at, like, for the state or the Metro Board of Equalization, the structure of it, we would look to make sure if that was, the alignment doesn't make sense, we would look at other comparable counties within the state or other areas to see if how they're aligned, to see if it does make sense, if it should be broken out. So those we can definitely audit. The only piece that would be harder for, our office does not have the expertise to actually audit the assessment process itself. That would be more somebody that we would use one of our consultants to do. But we could make an audit out of that. That would be more of a compliance type audit because the state does have strict process that is followed. We're not going to be able to tell them to do it more efficiently or effectively if they're following the state process. But we do make recommendations to change legislation. So that's not something that's outside of our scope or something that we couldn't do.
Just to follow up with that, and sorry, this is a question for the state. I don't mean to bring somebody else in here, but I have a question for you.
Sure.
What is the process that you use just to address that question directly to decide what properties are selected for review?
Before you answer, can you restate your name and who you're with so that the camera can hear and pick you up?
Sure.
Thank you.
Give me stand
You don't have to, it doesn't matter, you don't have to do that, but just.
My name is Ryan Duggan. I'm an assistant director with the comptroller of the Treasury, the Division of Property Assessments. So as far as, and this is, I guess, what we do is very specific. It's very unique, I will say that. So when you ask what properties we select for an audit, we do monitoring at least once every 2 years of the physical inspection that the assessor's office does. So in Davidson County, I'm going to use the prior cycle because you just went to a 3-year cycle. But in the 4-year cycle, the assessor must visually inspect every property in the county, real property parcel, within 3 years. Davidson County takes advantage, a lot of large counties take advantage of orthophoto review. Our parent organization, which is known as IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers, we typically follow their guidelines for orthophoto review. They have, the photos must be up to date at least every 2 years, sub 6-inch imagery in the urban, and I think nowadays the technology just blows that out of the water. So Ms. Wilhoit's office must inspect every property at least once during the 3-year period to verify that the characteristics on the property match what is actually on the ground. And when I say characteristics, I mean, this house is 1,500 square feet. They've added a garage in the back. I need to pick that garage up. You're only at market value once every 4 years in Davidson County. So that 3-year period is just to verify and correct any deficiencies in the characteristics of the property. That's all they're doing. So when we take that sample to go behind them, they're going to say, I'm going to do 33% each year. This is part of the reappraisal plan that is approved at the local level. Ms. Wilhoit has to develop a plan, and then it has to be approved by Metro, that this is how we're going to review all of these properties in 3 years. And it also details how she's going to value those properties during the revaluation year. Part of that is what we call an index map and a parcel breakdown. So if you can imagine the map right behind you of Davidson County, they're going to have a map like that. They're going to split it into zones, and I don't know the number, so I'm going to make it up. Zones 1 through 5. That's the major zones, and then within each one, you're going to have a subclassification of probably properties. These are residential, these are multifamily, these are commercial, these are rural, and then you're going to have a parcel breakdown by area that says, here's how many of each type of parcel is in this zone. So as the assessor's office reviews those parcels, we require quarterly progress reports to see if they are self-reporting on track to hit those numbers. If you had to do 100,000 parcels per year worth of review, you need to do 25,000 per quarter. They're going to report, we did these, we're ahead of schedule, we're behind schedule. And then when we do our monitoring, we're going to look at that parcel breakdown and overview map, try to select areas that have a cross-section of parcels. You're going to want urban, suburban residential parcels. You're going to want some commercial. You're going to want some rural residential. We're going to break that down, follow behind them, and our folks are going to go in the field and look at it and say, did they accurately capture those characteristics? Inadvertently, there's always going to be some things that are missed. Are they hitting what they need to hit? We're always going to have errors, but are they below 20% of our sample is what we're looking at. Are they big errors? Are they missing houses? You know, are you missing an entire house, or are you missing a three-foot addition to a wood deck on the back? Our folks go through, write up everything they find, give it to Ms. Wilhoit's office. Here's what we found. You either passed or you failed. And then we give them, I believe it's 30 days. I'd have to look at our procedures, 30 days to correct those deficiencies and then send the results back to us.
Okay, thank you.
Janine, or Director Reed, did you, I saw you.
Mine was a similar question for that, and then he got both of my questions. I do have actually another question.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Can I go back to Metro Board of Equalization, and this may be a question for the attorneys. So what I heard explained is that the board is, those members are selected by the mayor and then approved by council. Is that correct?
Yes, Josh Thomas with Metro Legal, that is correct.
And then, is there a conflict of interest statement? I was a little confused because I know that like when I ran for my position, I actually had to complete a conflict of interest statement. So do they complete a similar conflict of interest statement?
I would not be able to speak to that because that would be the council's process in confirming those appointees, and so I don't know if they have that requirement.
There's not.
Okay. So, okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to make a statement that seems like a process improvement that could be put in place probably by council office, but not necessarily the assessor's office, since that's a council process. That's the way I understand that.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas. Okay. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that there probably are some policy things or some realignments, to your point, of moving this, that, and the other. Every time we look at doing something like that, we have to have a study. And so this, in my mind, is sort of like the study, because you're going to look at what you just said, if I am understanding it properly, is that you would look at similar cities or counties or how they do it to have that separation. And I think none of this is against the office itself, because to your point, and this is just one part of this. But I think there's a lot of things that people feel uncomfortable with right now based off of the growth that the city is seeing. I think 20 years ago, nobody paid attention to their appraisal. It was so low. It was so, people don't even think about it. I know I didn't, and I was 25 years old. I was like, I don't even know what that is, but whatever. You know, and so now when you have these massive reappraisal values that are coming in, and you've got tax increases, and people are really being affected by it, I think that's when people go, whoa, wait a minute. I know I've never paid attention to this before, but I really need to pay, I really need some clarity on this. And that's what I think this is gonna do. And I appreciate that the state has their processes, and I think that's something that obviously would be, part of this audit. But I think there's a lot of really good things that could come into this, and so I'm in favor of it. I also just feel like from a public-facing perspective, when a council member or anyone is asking for just some clarity around this because they're receiving these concerns from their constituents, for us as a body to say no, I think is probably not the right way to go about it. That's not gonna foster trust. That's not gonna, that's just not good. It's also time. These departments, we want to audit them every 5 to 10 years-ish. And so we're coming up on 8 years. And so, I just think this is the perfect time for it. And so my only request, I think, I'm going to vote in favor, but I want the audit on the audit plan itself to be broad enough that you can decide, well, this is something that we feel like have some good controls, this over here, this is what we need to spend our time. I don't want to limit you, I think, and not to be invasive, but just to be all encompassing so that we can hopefully come back with a report that can be shared with the public, where everyone feels a little bit better about they still may not be happy with their appraised values, but to at least feel good about the process and that there's lots of eyes and there is process and there are controls and there, all of that, and to figure out, the separation and the policy that hopefully would come, those recommendations would come from this, so that the mayor's office and the council can respond appropriately.
Can I ask one other question? Because one is about assessment methodology, and I think, in my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that the assessment methodology is actually set by the state, and there are ways that you can evaluate a property, and the assessor's office has to evaluate those and that's something when you're monitoring that you review. You're shaking your head, but you're probably gonna have to answer.
Apologize. I didn't. I was waiting for your question.
So my question is that, so I'm trying to make, Councilmember Johnston, I'm also wondering when we vote on this, if we may want to break it down into pieces, because some of it, I'm gonna be honest, I feel like is maybe redundant from what the state is doing. They are doing specific it sounds to me like you were doing specific monitoring, you're reviewing, you're auditing, you're doing sample selections, you're going behind them, you're double checking. The plan is a very public plan. It goes before council and is approved. And so I'm not saying all of this should, I think the conflict of interest, yes, the MOB. So I will let you pause and let you answer that kind of question about.
Sure. So what we just talked about, yes, ultimately the assessment methodology, the standard practices, approaches to value, all of that is covered under statute, DPA policies and procedures, manuals approved by the State Board of Equalization, which is the, ultimate board for equalization in the state of Tennessee. So what we just talked about was the visual monitoring, visual review monitoring that we do. There's an entire division within the comptroller's office dedicated to nothing but property assessments. So we also monitor sales activity. Is the assessor's office verifying sales to include in the valuation as they should? Are they accepting, an accepted sale is used for the valuation of property, a rejected sale, family sale, business sale, something like that is not. We monitor sales, we monitor personal property, we monitor mapping, we monitor administrative functions annually, such as the Greenbelt program and administration of it. A big key component, and I've heard this a couple times, is this revaluation that you just went through where everyone gets their new values. I sent Lauren a copy of the revaluation final value summary. I would encourage you to look at that. That is, it's voluminous, is what I would say.
I printed one copy.
But especially during the revaluation year, we are very active with every assessor's office across the state, because a revaluation should do two things. It should achieve market value, as we talked about earlier, which is value people's homes at close to what we think they could get for them. That's step number one. We need to achieve market value. And the second step is equity. We need to treat everyone as equitably as we can, because you're going to have, across the state, you're using a sample of sales, say 7 to 8% of the entire population is determining those values. So if you're thinking of a subdivision, I've got 100 homes in it, there's maybe 10 sales in there. That's what we're using. We want to make sure that those 10 properties are not valued differently than the ones that did not sell. They should be equal and they should be measurable. So especially during a revaluation year, that's when we are very active with the assessor's office.
I think Director Riley addressed part of this when you were speaking before about the actual evaluation or assessing the procedure, and that you don't have the ability, but your job would just to be consult with them and making sure that we are following what those state guidelines are. So I don't think that would be a huge part of it. I do have a question just out of curiosity. So, for example, if someone's house has been, like in Creve Hall, obviously we have a ton of people that are renovating those houses. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people pull permits and sometimes they don't. So when you have someone's home that has been, bought and completely renovated and sold for $850,000, but the house next door to them, same square footage, but that has not been renovated. How do you balance that? Because I think that's what's happening in a lot of areas, and where a lot of these the accusation of being inflated values are coming from, and that it's like, well, wait a minute, I still have Pepto-Bismol pink tile in my house, in my bathroom, and these people just did a $400,000 renovation, and it's not fair type thing. But you can't physically go into everybody's house. And the permits, I know you can pull permits or to see if permits, but there's a lot, I'm just telling me, that doesn't happen a lot. So how do you?
Sure. So everything property assessment-wise in the state of Tennessee is ad valorem according to value. So when we talk about those sales in that neighborhood, that's going to kind of set I'm going to loosely use the term base rate. Roughly in this neighborhood, homes are selling for $250 a square foot. That's kind of the baseline, and then you're going to adjust upward and downward based on those characteristics we talked about earlier. His house is bigger than my home, so the dollar per square foot is going to go down. Renovation is, what you're describing is older homes that are being renovated, so that's typically handled through something called an effective age. If a home hasn't been touched, it's going to depreciate downward. From the moment it's built, it will depreciate % per year. Bam, 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 bam. If you completely renovate one, you're going to reset that depreciation with an effective age year. There's a couple ways to do it. That's the most common. So this house was built in 1948. They've completely redone it. The actual age is 1948. The effective age is 2010. And it's going to be worth more than the one next door where they haven't renovated. So the actual age is 1948 and the effective age is 1948. It's in the bottom basement. So that's how you can have sales in the area that set the value, but then the characteristics adjusted. Now, as far as pulling permits and not pulling permits, I think that's where the appeal process comes in. If the assessor thinks it's been renovated, they could do the effective age, and then during the informal appeal, you would come in and go, wait a minute, my house I've got that Pepto-Bismol pink, here's pictures, I've got that, and they'll go, oh, okay, So that's part of the appeals process for the property owners, is what I would say.
Okay.
Just whenever.
Yeah.
You done?
No, yeah, go ahead.
My concern too is just the one I expressed at the last meeting, which is also redundancy. So, in the 2017 audit that you all did you address any of these questions, particularly around, payment?
That's a good question.
I
I don't think we did on any of this, especially not the Board of Equalization piece of it especially.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick point of clarification? So, and it was around your question, comment, Councilmember Johnston, about, Lauren, your ability to do this. So some of this you can do internally, and then are you going to rely on the state or to go and look at their records? Is that what are you going to actually go hire someone else to come in and do similar work to what the state has done? Because that's what they're going to do, is they're going to do selections and, right, they're going to kind of do a similar process. It sounds to me like what the state is already doing, but I'm asking for clarification.
It's hard to say that specifically because what we would do in a planning of any audit is we go in there to make sure we're not, we ask all these questions. What is everybody else doing so that we aren't doing the exact same thing? Ryan was nice enough to give us a crash course on all of this stuff. But we still don't even have a full understanding from the 2 hours that we spent and the information that was sent. And so that would be reliant on, we would send out somebody preliminarily to go out there and kind of do the reconnaissance of all the different pieces. It's why we typically, especially with requested audits, keep them more broad, because that way we can rule out the pieces that somebody else is looking at and all the eyes are on because the risks aren't there. But then we have the latitude to find out all that's going on, that we can say, hey, but there is this piece, as Councilmember Allen, that things may have fallen through the cracks just because it's not the primary focus.
Thank you for that. And may I ask a follow-up question to Mr. Scanlon? So the 2017 audit, if it did not include, what precisely did it include?
It was more administrative, like the administrative functions of the office. I believe that there was payroll and some other types of just the policies and procedures that were in place to run the office, kind of, which is typical. I know she can't, I don't know if she can speak, but she probably knows it better than I do because I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, you can say what was audited in the 20, or
Right, it was
Okay.
in reference to that. We had no reason to believe that there was something wrong with the appraisal process.
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead. No.
So let me, if we do decide to move forward with this, then we have to remove something else?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one more
Yeah, sure.
clarification.
So if we were to rely on the state
I think
audit
that's it.
function that they already provide, would this 250-page state report then be incorporated, or?
It wouldn't be necessarily incorporated, but what we do in any of our audits, what you'll see is we have a scope section, and we would explicitly state that we scoped out the assessment process, or the pieces that we scope out due to the state's work that they're doing, or the oversight of other entities that we did not explicitly look at, so it would stay right there.
So, just again to follow up, because I think much of the goal of this is simply, to me, in my mind, is just simply to, further ground trust in government processes. And so, for me, it would be important as a citizen who has asked this question, if I, just not to come upon a statement that says, the state studied this and it's great. Don't worry about it. It would say, the state has studied this and here's the link to see where they covered these 10 things. Is that the way it would work? Is
We
this
could do
document-
that. That's not typically what we do, but we're also, it's not the similar situation. Usually when we put audits on the audit plan or other items, it usually is so focused, like the name of the report is gonna tell you explicitly what we looked at. In this instance, if that were the case, we can put links in there to all the different reports that are publicly available.
I think that would be helpful. I mean, if there's a report out that already says these things are all good, I would hate to leave that out and only show, a couple of deficits. So I would request that.
Mr. Scanlon?
Just a comment, as it looks like we are hurtling towards some kind of resolution here. The only other thing I would say is to my council member friends is that some of the things in the request are policy-oriented items that there's already agreement around that you all can do whenever you want.
But we need we
But-
always
but-
need a study
but
or
do
something
you-
to
but do
back
you
it
need-
up.
But that's what I'm saying, it's
No,
like, I
have
don't
you seen
want.
our meetings?
All right, fair enough, but if there's broad enough agreement for everybody to say this is a problem, my point is, I hope we don't use the audit to delay consideration of what everybody already agrees on.
Well, I think we can start asking those questions, but I do think that nothing moves quickly, and I think this could be something that it's like a 2-for-1 where we can get some policy recommendations based off of other things and get the study, done, and more than likely it wouldn't take effect until the following fiscal year, so we've got basically an entire year to work on it, so I think, that's typically when you would move something from someone's budget is in the budget cycle, so I think we have plenty of time to do that.
Just commentary. Just commentary.
The Vice Mayor, go ahead.
I think I'm wanting to figure out if we can kind of find a middle path between two chairs or vice chair's point at this, like, not being overly constraining and like hyper prescriptive in this moment to say all these things, but also not necessarily just leave it kind of wide open. And is there somewhat of a middle path to say, okay, well, we're gonna double check, as we often do, the issues that were addressed in 2017. Are there any issues that have been elevated through this request that were not addressed in 2017? And to Ms. Allen's point, if we are going to just obviate the things that the state already does and confirm the compliance there, have that, kind of forward facing, right? That doesn't necessarily take up work time. And so I'm just, because if we eventually have to make the decision, what are we gonna take out of the audit plan? I don't have a real good handle at present through our discussion of how much kind of staff time we're talking about. And so I don't wanna be hyper prescriptive, but I don't wanna be just kind of wide open. I do feel that y'all need some guidance from us, and so I don't know, Auditor Riley, if you have any thoughts in that regard about what would be sort of a typical routine touch, right? So that as we kind of contextualize this for the public, to Ms. Allen's point and Ms. Benedict's point of routine audit creates confidence in government and transparency. And when we are getting a lot of questions from constituents, how does this happen? Why does this happen? What do they do? You know, I think in particular, and Assessor Wilhoit and I did discuss this cycle from an administrative standpoint, making sure there is a public information officer at the assessor's office, because you have to have a lot of communication. Council needs plug-and-play resources to communicate into common misconceptions and help, you know, just kind of those sort of things. So, you know, on the administrative side of things, what sort of follow-up and recommended, what's responsive to your request but not redundant, and kind of what does the state already do? Like, I would like us to move towards a little bit more specificity without being hyper-prescriptive, this is the precise list. And so, I don't know if you have any feedback on that before we kind of make a motion.
It's hard because I'm trying to think through the ways, because the request itself includes the administrative functions,
Okay.
the assessment process, and the Metro Board of Equalization. So that encompasses a lot in itself.
Yeah.
And so to go in there and poke out specific pieces to pull out would be very difficult to do right now, because like I said, we don't have the background on that. But to your point about the 2017 audit, there was previous to that, there was a 2008 audit, so around 13. That looked at that was actually done by a consultant, because it did a lot of the software stuff. If you would like, we can do just a follow-up on the 2017 audit, where it's kind of finding out, because that was more administrative, so we can find out if their administrative functions have changed, anything like that, just kind of more of a streamlined, since that's not the bigger piece of what they're doing, or like the bigger, I guess, focus of this. We can do a follow-up on that, and then I personally think that the assessment part of it, having heard everything that's done, I don't think we would do much around it other than compliance. But at the same time, I also don't want to rule that out, because as an auditor, I don't know everything and I haven't planned it. So I don't want to rule out something where there's risks that I don't know. And so it's hard to kind of piece this.
I just would rather leave it broad, understanding that Auditor Riley has to manage everything and is not going to, I mean, she has to stay within a budget, she has a certain, number of man hours, she's not gonna do something that's redundant if she doesn't have to, and I trust her and her office to make those decisions based off of our broad request for her to be able to narrow it in scope, and so can I make the motion, or does somebody else have to make the motion?
I don't think anybody can make them.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Motion if you want to.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion to move forward with this audit. And do we have to choose what comes off during this motion as well?
You don't have to. I
Okay.
will tell you that if this is put on, then we are not going to complete the rest of the audit plan. Based on just an assumption of how many hours this is, I can tell you the two that we would probably take off. Which would be Metro Action Commission Head Start program, partially because with federal funding and everything around that program may not be the best thing to audit right now anyway. And then the other one I would recommend is Historical Commission and Historic Zoning Commission, only because that's newly separated, but then also the reason it's on there is because it's been so long and it's small, and that is one that we can easily put on in future years. And so that would be my recommendation if y'all decide to remove any, or you can leave them on there, and if we get to them, that's great. But I don't think we will.
Well, if it's not necessary in regard to this motion, I'm just gonna move forward with the motion to accept the request of Councilmember Benedict to do this audit, leaving scope up to the auditor herself.
To be presented at the next meeting?
Discretion and scope. I would suggest having as part of the motion that the next time we have a regular meeting, if you could advise as to, like, having kind of.
Is that enough time?
I was about to say, I don't know that we can do that. So when we have an audit that has begun, it is confidential until that report.
Fair.
So we can't, we could discuss it possibly in executive session because it'd be a draft audit, but we could not do that in public session.
Not even the scope?
Nope.
No, okay.
Well, then, can I amend your motion, please?
Maybe.
Has there been a second yet?
It's,
But there hasn't, yeah, it hasn't been seconded yet.
it's not objectionable. I don't think. Just to add on to that, if you could, and I don't even know how to put this in a motion, actually. Never mind, I just withdraw.
Well, what was your goal?
Just try, yeah.
The goal is to eliminate as much as you can, any redundancy that's out there, and limit the scope a little bit from what we have here, because it's just, that could be like, take up our entire work plan. And some of the things that even the things that you want to take off now are also important.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll also add that what we would do is, we would go in there with broad scope. We would ask about these things, but that does not mean we will audit all of these things, because once again, we may ask these questions and find out that there are all these processes and there's controls that maybe are not apparent to the public, but they are in place and the procedures are there, and it would scope down and would make it not worth our time.
I'm gonna add one last comment. Some of this too doesn't, it sounds like from what Attorney Thomas said, and I wanted to call you Josh so bad, is that some of that isn't controlled by them anyway. Like some of it, like conflict of interest, for example, is more like counsel, right? So it's kind of both, is that right, Lauren? Okay.
Well, and to Ms. Riley's point earlier, if I may, they have made recommendations to the council
Yeah.
before, as it relates to
That's great.
policy. And I think to Ms. Johnson's support, even if there is a member who at present an assessor expressed, it's a concern that she has shared and has been elevated previously. There's a little bit of redundancy, but it's actually sort of support for, your legislative goal and a goal that the assessor has already expressed, right? It's just saying, yes, we've looked at all these other cities and this is how they do it, and then that helps you situate your legislation, and and then the assessor's office say, we endorse this, and there we go, and we've done the thing, So I think my only concern would be just with respect to Ms. Benedict's request. I concur with you not being overly prescriptive. I think we have articulated in the public record we don't want to create redundancies. But I do want to be clear that we are not, by this vote, kind of affirming agreement with like every single thing that Ms. Benedict itemized here, nor setting the expectation that every single thing that was itemized here will be audited. So I think we have to be careful in that regard, with all due respect to what you've elevated.
From the discussion, that's clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It wasn't clear
Okay.
to me, sorry.
Okay, so I'm
Thanks
gonna
for saying that,
Yeah.
though.
I'm going to renew my motion to accept the request for this audit, leaving it broad in scope so that you can narrow it down based off of current policies, procedures, and avoiding redundancies and all of that.
That's what I say.
And all of that.
So your motion will need to say that you're motioning to amend the 2025 annual audit plan to
Okay.
add this audit.
I am motioning to amend the 2025 audit plan to include this audit requested by Councilmember Benedict on the assessor's office et al.
Yeah, as previously stated.
As previously stated the past hour.
Second.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
No, you cannot.
Not this time.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
You can leave room for discussion if there's any more.
Oh, is there any questions after that? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any against? Any not voting? All right, motion passes.
Now,
Oh.
Chair, do we want to take up a subsequent discussion about the items that
Remove.
Auditor Riley mentioned about removal?
If we want to go ahead and discuss what we would want to remove from the audit plan, or if we,
I would move to bump 15 and 18, Metro Action Commission and Metro Historic Commission to the very bottom
Second.
of the list. And
Well, you're taking it off the audit plan, right?
Taking it off or bumping it down?
You can't bump it down.
That's what I was doing.
You can do that. The other option is if you want to wait, we can bring it back to you, like, and ask to change it later. But feel like
I'm good with removing it, so I'll second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Any not voting? Okay, so the motion passes to remove the Metro Action Commission Head Start program, as well as the Historical Commission and Historic Zoning Commission off of the 2025 audit plan. Okay, consideration for items for future meetings. I don't think, yeah. Okay, so I guess we can adjourn. Do I need a motion to adjourn, or do I just say, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
parking passes?
Aye.
Yes, parking passes are there, pick them up if you need them. Do we need to go into executive session? We do not. All right.
Way to run that.
Yay.
you gotta click that, you gotta turn off the.
No, you're alive. No, I'm not. Stop meeting.